in this world of karmic purification that it's very important to understand, and the vibration is so high right now. And one thing I didn't finish saying is that in this alignment with the Kali and Shiva access point that we're in right now, which I'm going to explain because this has a lot to do with 2020 and what happened, that there is this electricity that's actually created. It's almost, I know that NASA has been releasing that there in the last year and a half since this started, that there's this red electromagnetic energy that's coming from the galactic center, and they don't know what it is. And this is this cosmic electricity that is requiring people to be grounded. So if one has to realize what COVID is and help us understand why are so many people getting sick, it's because we're all going through this such a deep level of karmic purification, and there's so much fear, and fear is held in the lungs. And the planet Rahu, the north node of the moon, rules the lungs of the body.
Wow. That's all I'm going to say. Wow.
And Rahu's the great trickster, meaning that we're not saying, because, of course, I don't want to get all my social media shut off. I'm not saying that, speaking the truth and saying, well, I'm just reciting something from the ancients, basically, and knowing about what happens, right? Well, every 18 years, Rahu takes about a year, the nodes, they're called Ketu and Rahu, and they're the measurement points of eclipses, and they're in your natal chart. They're in everybody's natal chart, and they have full-fledged status of a planet, the north node and the south node of the moon. The north node represents our desire and this in what we want in the future. The south node, Ketu, represents the past, who we were, and our karmic completions of life. And when the nodes move into this part of the sky, Rahu, which is this basically this demon that steals the nectar of immortality from the gods during the churning of the ocean. This is also the same story when Shiva turned purple as well. This was one of the greatest stories in ancient Vedic literature, because it has so much depth of the meaning of the story, where they're creating these gods, and there was a demon that stole this and swallowed it and became immortal, and he basically tricked the gods. Well, Vishnu captured him and cut his head off. Or there's different stories that Mohini, his consort, cut the head off. There's many different interpretations of everything. But what happened is that, well, he drank the elixir, the nectar, or the amrita, so he was already immortal. So he's like, okay, what are you going to do with me now? So Vishnu puts them as these karmic indicators of life, and it's so much about what is happening right now in the world. And it's required for many people, I feel, to really learn about what's happening in Vedic astrology with Ketu and Rahu and the nodes right now, because it's everything. Because Rahu is the planet of creating pandemania, basically. And it's in the full strength in the sign of Taurus. Planets have a dignity. So Rahu and Ketu have this alignment, even though they're eclipse measurement points and they actually don't exist like planets. But if you go to India, they have the temples, the Rahu and Ketu temples, that people try to appease Rahu and Ketu, to try to raise the vibration of Rahu, which is more innovation, not lower doom and gloom negativity.
Wow.
So what happens is that when I know this is kind of deep and a lot to be able to kind of sort out to try to understand.
I love it. Everybody that listen up, I think this is going to give the invitation for people to do a call to action of really study the Vedas and really study the wisdom within. It's so powerful. It's really a call to action to the divine in us also. Keep going, Peter.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. So when the North Node, this is the key point here. When the North Node, so planets have what's called a dignity. Certain planets do extremely well in their own houses, and also they move into a state that's called exalted, where they have full power. Well, such as especially planets in its own sign, its own house. So what happens is when the North Node, which is this character in Vedic astrology and the terminology of ancient wisdom that's very respected, that they build temples. It's not like he's a demon. He's one of what's called the Nagas. And the Nagas are these basically cosmic deities that have this beautiful wisdom in them too also as well. They're loaded with, they're here actually to help the humans. So it's not like there's bad ones or good ones, but there is this great mystical power of the Nagas, Ketu and Rahu. Rahu is a Naga and Ketu is called a Sarpa. And this kind of would get a lot to understand what they actually mean. But I'm sorry, Rahu is connected to the Sarpas and Ketu is actually a Naga. And so basically what happens is that they sometimes can teach us, they can create illusions also in our life, because an eclipse is related to the eclipse, how it lines up in our chart. But eclipses are very important to understand because huge events take place during the eclipses. When, as an example, like when Christ was crucified on the cross, the sky turned black. There was a solar eclipse. When the Roman Empire, which you can actually watch the movie on Netflix, Ottoman, they attacked and took completely, the Roman Empire was ended during a lunar eclipse. So there's these eclipse cycles that are very important that mark the beginnings. And the day after Christmas of December 26th was the day of a solar eclipse. And the solar eclipse, I looked at that eclipse, and 2 weeks later, Saturn changed signs after 2.5 years, after a 27-year cycle, and it moved into Capricorn. But what happened is that during this eclipse, that the eclipse actually created the coronavirus. It was first announced the day of this eclipse, where the Chinese said, hey, we got a problem, we found this virus, and we've identified it. That was actually the beginning of the coronavirus. And with all these planets, 7 planets that were in the sign in Sagittarius, where Rahu is, in Ardra Nakshatra, that things became very difficult at that point, or there was this huge illusion, should I say, that was actually created, whether it was real or whether it was not. But Rahu is at the peak in Taurus, where it's at this exalted state, meaning that this is the highest point of illusion or deception in the world right now.
Yes.
And listen to this. The 9/11 was when Rahu, the North Node, was in Ardra 18 years before. 18 years back, it was the AIDS virus, where the whole world had this new finding as well.
Wow.
It went back to the assassination of John F. Kennedy.
Yeah. I was thinking of that today. I was thinking how incredible the cycles. I was thinking of John F. Kennedy, and then I was thinking of AIDS, and then this is so exciting.
Yeah. So it's important to understand because Rahu because it's in its full power. So what does that mean? It can mean ultimately Rahu is all about liberation and raising the vibration of the consciousness, but on a lower astral plane, it's about total deception in the world. So I'm not saying that the coronavirus is all made up, or I'm not saying that 9/11 was made up, but or John F. Kennedy was made up, the assassination of John F. Kennedy. But there are all these shadowy events that happen where people kind of scratch their head, go, what? And then everything kind of gets covered up. And
yeah,
so we don't really know about
I don't know if you know the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, where the Emperor. So I feel that we're in that era. I'm simplifying. If you haven't read the Emperor's New Clothes, that's the ultimate. I will think that Rahu wrote that story. Rahu wrote that story for the world. Anyways, please keep going because I know you have.
Yeah, yeah. But because we are in the cycle of, say, I guess I could say great liberation, yet at the same time, it's a double-edged sword because technology can help us, but technology also kill us. And so Rahu as well, it can bring this deception, but this is also because Rahu is in its full strength, can be a time period of great liberation. Like I have Rahu in my 8th house of esoteric wisdom exalted in the sign of Taurus. So I recently also went through what's called where Rahu met my natal chart, where Rahu was in my 8th house. So it's been kind of a very powerful time period for me also as well. And so if we can understand what happens in these cycles, the main deity for Rahu is Durga. The way that we raise the vibration of Rahu is by, well, if we can't beat him, join him, raise our spiritual consciousness right now. And this means that we don't have time to waste right now. And it seems funny because a lot of us feel like we have times to waste. Now, listen to this. Rahu is in the sign of Taurus, and Taurus is the second sign, and it's the natural ruler of the second house. And just as the eclipse, I've never heard anybody speak about this, which was my own kind of realization a few weeks ago. Just as the eclipse Rahu's responsible for this eclipse and the measurements of these alignments and when the eclipses happen. Rahu represents the shadow and the sphere that moves over the sky, because in ancient times, people would see the eclipse and they'd be, oh no, it's an omen. Such as like Christopher Columbus on one of his journeys was tied up by natives and they were about to kill him. But then this eclipse came and they thought it was an omen and they let him go. So such as the Ottoman Empire, when they destroyed the Roman Empire in Constantinople, they also created this huge fear by knowing themselves that they were going to win finally after many, many years of trying to conquer Constantinople. So the eclipses kind of create this illusion in a lot of ways. Now Rahu is in the second sign, which represents our speech, our communication, and our vision, and our money. And think about it, a covering of the mouth of our speech since Rahu moved into the sign of Taurus. And think about it, the second house is money, earned income, and Rahu puts on the shadowy nature of the second house of the things that we say, and the things really that we can't see because we don't really know what's going on, and our money. And these seem to be the main issues right now, where people have these masks on and they're worried because they have this fear. But this is what Rahu does. Rahu rules. If we look at Rahu and we look at each planet is responsible for different organs, such as Jupiter's endocrine system, Venus is the sexual organs of elimination, Mercury's the nervous system and the skin. But Rahu represents the lungs, basically, which has the full-fledged status of a planet. So this is very interesting to see now in this full power, how when Rahu moves into this part of the sky in Taurus that rules the mouth, that there's a censorship right now. So, you may ask me, well, that's great, but what does that mean to me? And the thing is that there's a beautiful synchronistic pattern. And instead of everybody, what I feel, trying to get so deep into controversial theories and to made-up stories, that we should really be focusing on nature, on what has happened in the past. And that's why I talked about bringing up the study of the cycles of the Yugas, because 12,000 years ago, where we have this alignment with the galactic center right now, was the cycle of the Great Flood. And whether that was the sinking of Lemuria or Noah's Ark, it was exactly the same part of the sky. All the planets were doing the exact same thing because it was on the opposite side of this huge 24,000 wheel. So all the planets were in the same position as they are literally just a few months ago. But the opposite side, they're like mirror kind of. You know what I mean? So we can learn everything from what happened 12,000 years ago